We trust our memory a lot. Not just our individual memory of people we know or things we need to do, but our collective memory, of society's memory as a whole. From advancements in science to political decisions, we trust that we're at the forefront of humanity because on the timeline, we're at the very front of humanity. And because of that, we have thousands of years of good and bad decisions to learn off of. But what if we're forgetting something? What if in the same way you might forget someone's name or a thing you had to do, what if we as a culture can't seem to remember something? What if in our understanding of histories, culture, technology, what if there is a massive ink blot on the page? But even if there is some stuff missing, it shouldn't matter, right? Because as far as we know, we're the most advanced our species has ever been. Or at least, as far as we know. And that is the terror of today's series, The Oldest View. But I'm getting ahead of myself. The Oldest View by Kane Pixels is probably the best scary thing on the internet ever. I may be speaking in slight hyperbole, but it's close. Not only is the craftsmanship of the series incredible to anyone who even takes a quick glance at it, but what I want to talk about today is how the writing and the understated horror of the series work so well as well. I can't think of another recent project that has so easily stolen my mind as The Oldest View. I think about this stupid giant like twice a week. And it's because the backstory, the setup, the payoff, everything revolving around the giant is so well done. But again, I'm getting ahead of myself. Today, I want to talk about The Oldest View and what makes it so special. We're going to start with a linear walkthrough of the series itself, and then from there move into analysis and trying to explain what all of it means. So most importantly, if I haven't talked you into The Oldest View yet, I don't know what will. All I can say is if you haven't seen it yet, before you watch this video, it will be linked in the description. Go watch it, enjoy it for yourself. Don't let me rob you of your first experience. The series has received a lot of praise, and rightfully so. Even people who have no idea what any of it means know that there's something moving behind the curtain. And I, for one, can't wait to talk about it. My only public relationship with The Oldest View is the several million views worth of videos of me screaming and whimpering like a child in front of a live audience. And I can never fix that, but hopefully this blurs that at least a little bit, but probably not. But yeah, hopefully here I can do something at least a little bit thought-provoking to add to the pile of me crying. So do with that what you will, and also do what you will with the new merch. For the summer, I once again partnered with Juniper to come out with a new t-shirt design, and they informed me that I say the phrase "do what you will" a lot, which I thought was a thing that a lot of people said, but it turns out they don't. So anyway, it's on a t-shirt now. Not only, as with any of Juniper's designs, the guys who have done my previous merch, is the design incredibly comfortable, and the print itself is actual stitching that is raised above the lining of the shirt, but check out the back. That is right, a super cool, once again, raised stitching of the logo with text that says things like "under the iceberg," and looks like I'm really punk and an adult, while once again we talk about me crying over a cardboard statue. And along with the t-shirt, I am dropping the first in a series of cryptid pins. That is right, I'm releasing a series of cryptid pins, starting with some of my favorite cryptids. Since my logo is based on the Wendigo, this technically counts, along with Braxy, the Flatwoods monster, and of course, Mothman. There will be more of these metallic cryptid pins in future drops, but I wanted to start with some of my favorites. So you can get the pins as well as the t-shirt for a limited time before they're gone forever at the link in the description. As always, the link is wendigoon.shop. It will be available for a limited amount of time and then it's gone forever, so get them while you can. Also, when you're watching this, I will be making ready to begin the Stalker movie tour. Most of the seats have sold out, but there's a few left, so if you're interested in meeting me on the tour, then get in on those while you can, also at the link in the description. I won't take up too much more time, but between how the merch is performing to how the tour is performing, just thank you all for everything. I'm almost done paying rent, but if you're still here, then stick around after the ad when we talk about these unexplainable nightmares that keep me up at night and make me sad if I think about them for too long. But before we start talking about an inexplicable evil, let's talk about an explicable good with today's sponsor, AG1. AG1 is the daily foundational nutritional supplement that I, as well as many, have come to know and love. Not only because AG1 contains things that you're probably missing out on your daily diet, like probiotics, various vitamins and minerals, but because whenever I start to put the things in my body that my body needs, I just generally feel better. AG1 helps me to have energy I need to get through a work day. Being a YouTuber, I'm about as chronically online as it gets, so anything that helps my body not act that way is good by me. Most of us don't realize that we're so low energy because, again, our body is missing out on key nutritional supplements that we should be getting. And as it turns out, I'm not the only one that feels that way, as AG1 is backed by multiple research studies. As in a research study, over 90% of participants said that after 30 days, they felt more energy. And I, for one, feel the same way. And the best part is, instead of being a bunch of different pills, multivitamins, and supplements I have to take every day, AG1 is instead just one drink. Because with 12 ounces of water and a spoonful of AG1, you're good to go. I like AG1 because it makes my body less sad and miserable for the things that I don't give it. And if you're interested at getting in on this deal, then today is a great time to get in on the offer. That's because right now, if you head to the link in the description at drinkag1.com/Wendigoon or scan the QR code, along with your order of AG1, you will receive a free welcome kit. This includes 5 extra days of AG1 in their convenient travel packs, a bottle of vitamin D3 and K2 to get even more of the nutrition that you need, and a free shaker bottle. That's right, to get in on all of this along with your first subscription of AG1, head to the link in the description at drinkag1.com/Wendigoon or scan the QR code to get in on this incredible offer today. Thank you all so much for watching the ad. Thank you so much to AG1 for sponsoring the video. It really does mean the most. Hope you all check them out. Link is in the description and the QR code, and we are back to the video. We are going to go ahead and get into it, but as always, thank you for watching. The Oldest View is a big series with a lot to talk about. So let's start at the beginning. The first video of The Oldest View was uploaded on March the 19th of 2023. The title of this video being Renewal. This episode clocks in at one of the shortest in the series at just over 4 minutes in length. As it opens, we see a man standing in a world that is black and white, other than the greenery of the nature around him. The man picks up a flower before he walks to a river and sets on a log. As he begins reading and writing in his journal, the camera pans up to follow his view. We fade into the image of someone creating a giant face. We don't know what this is for yet, but we will soon. As we stare at the unfinished face, we hear the song When the Swallows Homeward Fly by Alan Thompson. And on this visual, the video ends. Nothing that you saw is supposed to make sense yet, but it will later. The second video, Beneath the Earth, was uploaded on May the 15th of 2023. The video opens with us once again looking up at a canopy of trees. However, as we're looking up, the sound of what seems to be a rolling wheel is heard. Quickly, the camera cuts to someone named Wyatt going on a vlogged adventure. Wyatt, who is voiced by Kane Pixels himself, says that he has found something interesting on a park just outside of town. Wyatt doesn't give us a specific location, as he says this is far into private property and he doesn't want to get into trouble. However, he found something strange while out on a walk and can't help but show other people. He gets to the top of a hillside, and underneath the shade of a large tree, there seems to be a hole in the ground. This hole gives way to a massive tunnel. This tunnel seems to be some kind of staircase that drops straight down into the earth. This was all special effects. I don't even know how you start to learn to do this. Wyatt steps into the tunnel, imagining that it must connect to some kind of bunker or storage system. He makes the interesting note as he steps into the tunnel that it seems as if the staircase used to go higher, but was seemingly cut off into the ground above. Wyatt points out a couple of anomalies regarding the staircase, other than, the fact that it exists in the first place. For one, it's in the middle of nowhere, and 2, the lights being on imply that someone is still using this facility. Despite a lot of rain over the past several days, as Wyatt mentions, there seems to be no rainwater in this staircase, which again doesn't make sense because there's just a giant hole where the top of the staircase used to be. Wyatt ventures down the staircase, and when he gets to a breaking point, he turns to his left to see that the staircase just continues even further down. Wyatt also makes another interesting point that it seems that the block incisions into the rock on either side of the staircase implies that rooms either once existed there or were designed to be added on later. Again, pointing to the idea that he may be in some kind of megastructure. or at least something that was once intended to be that. Eventually, Wyatt gets to the bottom of the staircase and comes across a large, black, wooden door. A lot of the horror in the oldest view is very understated and subtle, but there's a few moments like this that really capitalize on it. The picture of the door, the way it pans up, the way it's shot, the way it breaks pace from everything we've seen up until then in Wyatt's journey, it feels like we're watching a crime scene investigation. It gives a sense of gravity of something uncanny in a world of uncanny that we've already stepped into. Wyatt steps through the black door, only to find that it leads to some kind of derelict shower. Stepping to the other side of this ruined shower, there is a metal gate that, when peering under it, Wyatt discovers something odd. On the other side of this metal gate is a sort of kiosk. Not only that, but unlike the room and staircase he was previously in, the room in front of him seems to be carpeted and well kept. Wyatt steps underneath the gate to see that this small room isn't the largest mystery this complex has to offer, as it seems the room beyond this small area is an entire shopping mall, here with music and indifference in the middle of the earth. This is for most people where the series gets interesting. It went from kind of abstract images and like a strange staircase to there is an entire shopping mall underground. Well, with this proposition of something weird, Kane takes us into the next episode. The third video in the oldest view is called The Rolling Giant, and this is where the majority of our story up until this point occurs. The Rolling Giant was posted on October the 8th of 2023. As with the past two episodes, our opening shot is that of nature, while in the background, sounds of screaming or excitement can be heard as a steady rumbling grows louder and louder. Once again, we are suddenly cut back in to Wyatt's next vlog. Wyatt, despite the impossibility of this discovery, has decided to keep it to himself. Wyatt mentions that he is currently a business major, but previously to this degree had a botany professor whom he was close with. Wyatt figures that given this structure underneath the earth, it's some kind of government project or super rich secret meetup or something. So before he ventures back, he places some trail cams to see what he's getting into. However, after leaving them there for some time, the staircase doesn't seem to have any visitors. The last of these pictures from the trail cam being taken on May the 22nd, 2023. This will matter later. So Wyatt, unable to stay away from this incredible discovery, has decided to venture in once again. When Wyatt makes his way to the staircase this time, he notes that a light at the top of the staircase has gone out. He gives a brief mention that a mining company, as well as various locals, own the land that the structure is underneath. Basically, there's no clear giveaway as to what the mall might be used for based on who owns the land. Another unique thing that Wyatt mentions is that the fragrance of the staircase itself is like that of cut grass, or more specifically, a cornfield. Wyatt once again ventures down the staircase, past the door, past the showers, through the kiosk, and then once again to the gate that leads its way into the rest of the mall. Wyatt goes to open the gate, but the roller gate gets away from him, flying into the ceiling and making a loud crash. Wyatt freaks out and runs back to the staircase, but after some time has passed, he finally ventures into the underground mall. The special effects are so good that it's easy to show someone just a few minutes of any section from this video and have them convinced it was shot on set. I also want to mention, Kane's effects are so good that a bunch of people on TikTok were convinced that the footage from this episode was actual footage of someone discovering a secret underground elite cabal of human trafficking and devil worship and whatnot. I think that's how you know you've made it as a visual effects artist, when your YouTube project can be used as a psyop. Kane is a master of his craft when it comes to storytelling, effects, directing, and while the primary point of this video is to talk about the storytelling aspect of it, the other parts, like the visuals on display, can't be overstated. Stepping into the mall, Wyatt sees that there is an AMC theater in the middle of the mall, as well as advertisement for things like the Midtown AR Walk, or a healthy promotional poster that says, "Can you name 8 veggies that begin with the letter B?" Wyatt, at one point, even making the mention that this reminds him of the backrooms he saw on TikTok. After passing by a sign, we see that this mall is the Valley View Center at Dallas Midtown, and that it is currently going through redevelopment. Wyatt continues to walk through the mall, coming across several art studios. The most important poster he comes across is one that says, in large letters, "We're back," detailing the recreation of the Parade of Giants from the Margaret Hunt Hill Bridge opening. Now, all the details of this mall are hyper-specific, and we'll get into that later, but what I want to talk about now is the image on the poster. We see on the poster a giant, bearded, cardboard figure with huge hands made out of flowers. Now, while many people, and by many people I mean myself,
We're back.
what on God's earth is that? Absolutely not. No, I'm not playing this game. All right, guys, we're watching Radar now. Radar, it's a new horror series from. bro, I hate everything about this. I hate uncanny, like it's human but it's not BS. And I know. I see the thumbnail.
You don't want to see them again and learn their stories?
I see. What did you say? Say that again. What?
See them again, learn their stories.
He's very kind looking.
What about this is kind looking, Alex? What do you mean?
He wants to give you a hug. Look at those arms.
Yeah, its hands are bigger than its head. It looks like it wants to rip you into ribbons.
Or bigger hugs.
For bigger hugs. Yeah, that's why it's so big. Found this visage to be absolutely terrifying on first glance. What I want to point out now is that on closer inspection, and this will become apparent as the series goes on, this is the same figure we saw being constructed in Renewal. As in, the cardboard face that was only partially assembled seems to be the first steps of this giant flower-handed thing. Wyatt continues to walk through the mall, and after seeing a giant mural of an octopus on the back wall, he quickly turns to his right to see the giant from the poster now standing in front of him. Which, the first time that I saw this, it sent me to heaven. If that octopus moves, I'm out, bro. Oh my gosh!
That scared the shit out of me. I won.
That's how you know.
That was it.
That was like the biggest jump scare reaction I've ever seen out of you.
This is like the highest honor you can receive.
He was dwelling on the poster of him so hard. And then it happened. He got the nightmare.
I think he died.
Yeah, I think so. Well, hey chat, we're taking over now. Your streamer died.
Yeah, can you do a good Wendigoon impression?
Oh, hey guys, I'm covering mental catalog.
Dude, that's the worst thing. Hold on, let me think about it before I say this. That, as far as like an image, right? Like a second appearance, might be the worst jump scare I've got in any of these series, bro. It's so big. And like oh gosh, the space that it's in is so menacing too. It's such a quiet menace, and then just this, oh, I hate it. Oh my gosh.
Thank you.
I can't describe what it is about the giant specifically. It is a combination of its size, its outstretched hands taking up so much space in the room, the uncanniness of the eyes, the way the white dots imply so much depth even though there is none. There's something so broken and wooden about its construction that the idea of it moving or the idea of it being a threat is incredibly off-putting to me. I understand a lot of people find this giant flower thing funny, and me incredibly stupid for being afraid of it. And guess what? You're probably right, and I also don't care. It's my video. Wyatt begins to approach this giant before suddenly the mall turns on, almost as if it's opening hours for the structure itself. With this, Wyatt is terrified that he has either activated something or someone's about to come in. So quickly and quietly, Wyatt tries to run back to the exit. However, when he gets to the staircase that he entered in, he finds that the staircase is collapsed. In a panic, Wyatt begins to try to shovel rubble out of his way or find some means of getting back up before realizing it's futile. Wyatt sits there for who knows how long, potentially realizing that mistakes had been made and something bad might happen. So with no means of going back up, Wyatt must now find another way out. He steps out of the kiosk containing the now destroyed staircase and sees a series of exit signs across the ceiling. As he begins to follow the path, he sees again more art studios. Not only do several of these buildings contain art in windows, as well as pictures of a bearded man and of the giants, these windows contain several interesting illustrations. We see illustrations of a bearded figure, as well as giants very similar to the giant bearded flower thing we saw a moment earlier. Out front of these displays, there's also leaves on the ground. A surprising change of pace from the entirely industrial mall we've seen up until this point, or at least that Wyatt has seen from within the structure. Eventually, Wyatt gets to the exit to find that it only leads to bedrock. Sure, in a normal mall design, this is where the glass front entrance would be located, but here it simply opens up into the earth that the mall is consumed under. As Wyatt ventures back to the center of the mall, trying to figure out what to do next, thunder can be heard, which causes the lights to flicker and the music to stop. Looking across the atrium in the middle of the mall, Wyatt sees the giant from before now rolled into a different position. Wyatt figures this must be someone playing games with him. With no other avenue of escape, Wyatt begins to approach the giant. However, as Wyatt gets closer, he loses sight of the giant for an instant, and as he does, the giant disappears. Wyatt is now sure that something in the mall is messing with him. Wyatt finds a map of the mall and tries to locate an exit there. Another interesting thing that we see of the mall during this section is if you look into the pit at the middle of the atrium, it seems that a wall from the mall has been destroyed or ripped down. This is one of the only signs we see, at least for now, of the mall in a state of disrepair. Wyatt follows the exit on the map earlier only to find that it is once again another dead end. This time simply leading to a kid's playground and, once again, more artist studios. However, this studio, Midtown Artist Studios to be specific, doesn't seem to be a studio at all. And when Wyatt gets close, bizarrely, it is a giant forest. A giant forest complete with the sounds of birds and nature beyond the roller gate. As Wyatt begins to wonder what this could mean, suddenly there is a noise from the center of the mall. The noise almost being a kind of squeaking, as if something is being wheeled around very quickly. Wyatt begins to slowly make his way to the center of the wall when suddenly he hears the squeaking again, to turn around and see that the giant is standing right behind him. Wyatt says hello, once again assuming that someone is doing this, but there's no response. Wyatt begins to turn around and walk away when he suddenly hears the rolling wheels once more before spinning around to see that the giant is getting closer. Wyatt doesn't know what's going on. He believes now that something more sinister is at play. He says to the giant that he's leaving and begins to hurriedly walk away. Thunder happens once again and the sound of the giant's rolling continues. Only this time, when Wyatt turns to face it, it doesn't stop. The giant keeps getting closer. Wyatt sprints as fast as he can, making his way to the escalator. Once Wyatt is on the escalator, the giant stops its pursuit, seemingly because it can't make it up the stairs. The giant then slowly turns around and pushes itself away, back in the direction that the chase began. This spin also confirms to both us and Wyatt that it is not a person controlling the rolling giant, as it seems the giant is controlling itself. Wyatt is confused and terrified by this and desperate to find a way out. As Wyatt is looking down another hallway for a path of escape, he comes across a Bard's store. As he begins to make his way back to the center of the mall, the giant is now blocking his path and getting closer quickly. Wyatt begins to throw himself into the store door as the giant gets closer. Wyatt breaks down the bar, sprinting into the room with moments to spare. Before entering a maze of corridors at the back of the mall, he gives one last look to the entrance to see the giant right before it shatters the glass and begins to chase him. Wyatt begins sprinting through the back rooms of the mall, hurriedly trying to lose track of the giant behind him. Potentially realizing that it doesn't seem the rolling giant could follow him down the tight corridors, Wyatt quiets himself and begins to sneak slowly through the back rooms of the facility. Eventually coming out at another shop, making a dash across the center of the mall, and making his way into the offices of the mall itself. The offices hold a lot of interesting visuals and things that will be important in the analysis of this video. We see schematics for things like streets with corresponding trees that will be planted alongside them. We see pictures of concept work for new designs and buildings to be built in the future. as well as schematics and plans for future mall locations. Eventually, Wyatt comes across a document labeled 183-71905. This shows that there is an exit at the very top of the mall above the AMC Theater. With no other options, Wyatt presses back out to the center of the mall with a new goal in mind. However, when Wyatt makes it back to the public portions of the mall, it seems that the mall has now been lost to time. What was once an ideal manicured facility is now overgrown, rotted, broken. It's as if the mall was left to contend with 100 years of nature by itself. The mall itself had been reclaimed and rooted as if Wyatt had been in the office for a millennia. Remembering the exit on the schematic he found earlier, Wyatt tries to make it to the escalator before the giant comes rolling from behind the escalator itself. Wyatt, with no time to spare, begins sprinting around to the escalator on the mirrored side of the atrium. As Wyatt is running, the mall once again springs to life. The lights of the structure all turning on at once as if the mall is once again open for business. As Wyatt is running, he glances to his right and catches a quick glimpse of what appears to be several giants, not just like our rolling giant, but similar, gathered together, watching him. Wyatt sprints up the other escalator, but when he gets to the top, he sees the staircase he was supposed to take for an exit is labeled as out of order. Even more awful, Wyatt turns around to see that the giant is now using the escalator. Wyatt climbs to the top of a small scaffolding, now staring the giant in its eye. In a moment of desperation, Wyatt screams out to the giant,
"What do you want?"
And even more strange, on top of a series of events that are already strange, thunder is heard once again, but this time as the lights flicker, we see several animals and people laid across the ground. As soon as this is over, the giant charges at Wyatt. Wyatt quickly jumps from the scaffolding onto a large support structure along the ceiling of the mall itself. Wyatt turning around to see that the giant had crashed into the position he was with such force that the concrete is now crumbling around him. Wyatt looks over across the ceiling to see that there is another exit across the support beams. Carefully and precariously, Wyatt begins to slowly inch his way around to the opening. As he does, he looks back to see the giant now traveling back to the center of the room. Wyatt gives one last look to the top of the escalator where we last saw the giant, only now to see this weird stand in the giant's place. Wyatt balances himself along the rail right before the opening. He lines up the jump, but right before he can take the step, the beam gives way and Wyatt falls to his death. We then cut to Wyatt's body. We know that it's Wyatt's body because that's Kane's body. And Kane plays Wyatt, and after the suffering that Kane put me through, it's nice to see him dead on the floor. Wyatt is lying on the ground in a forest that seems to be the same forest from Renewal. We know this because everything is black and white, except for once again, the greenery of nature around him. Rolling thunder can be heard once again as the giant watches, and the video fades to black. And with that, we have the ending of The Rolling Giant. The Rolling Giant is by far the biggest piece of the puzzle we have thus far. There's so many questions and clues given to us at the same time. What does the art studios mean? What's the forest within the mall? Why the pictures of this bearded man who weirdly resembles the giant itself? What is the giant itself? What is the Valley View Mall? Why do any of these hyper-specific things matter? All things we'll talk about soon, but for now, let's finish the story. One thing I want to mention is the odd podium we see above the AMC Theater at the top of the escalators right before Wyatt falls is actually the rolling base that the giant itself sits on top of, and there will be proof of this later. Life of a Giant was posted on December the 2nd of 2023. Now, this one's interesting and pretty much confirms a lot of my theories I'm going to talk about in the analysis segment, but I don't want to give it away too quickly, so we will come back to this video later. For now, I want to go on to what is, at the time of recording, the last video in the Oldest View series. That video is Dispersal, posted on April the 11th of 2024. We open on a shot of what appears to be the same black wooden door that Wyatt first entered the mall through back in beneath the earth. While staring at the door, we can hear the ending of The Rolling Giant, specifically the part where Wyatt is trying to escape before he falls to his death. Upon Wyatt's death, it seems that something in the mall changes. The door pushes back to reveal to us a dark forest. We then see a shot from the opposite angle. From within this dark forest, pushing into the bright light of the mall. With this, we suddenly cut to a clip from the Dallas Midtown Project Conference, which has to be so weird if you don't know where this is going, but we'll stick with it. The conference is being led by a man named Scott Beck, and around him we see several blueprints and plans for a new mall at what appears to be a sort of groundbreaking meeting. From here, we cut back once again to the dark forest and once again to Wyatt's body. From this, we fade into the image of the empty base of the giant that, again, we saw at the end of the rolling giant. Or if you're reading the wiki, we see the image of two umbrellas. I don't know who writes the wiki, but we should pray for them. From here, we see through the darkness that a crack of light begins to form. The crack grows and grows until it illuminates the face of the rolling giant, and we suddenly cut once again to the ending of the rolling giant, the third video of the Oldest View series. Everything plays out the same. Wyatt is panicked. He's working his way across the high beams above the mall itself. Wyatt jumps off the beam in the nick of time and finds himself in the staircase leading up. He looks back to see the mall still the same behind him, the only difference the A and AMC now hanging, and without a moment to spare, begins to sprint up the stairs. He runs and runs through the darkness before we cut to an overhead view of the forest he has now escaped back into. I spoke earlier of how Kane is a brilliant effects artist, how he is a brilliant writer and a brilliant director, and this scene really highlights the directing portion. The music that is being played during this, the panic of it all, the uneasiness, the way the camera is so put off and distant from Wyatt, but still slowly pushing in on him, increasing the claustrophobia, giving this sense of urgency, the time is almost out. Wyatt runs as fast as he can to get back to his car and escape the horrors he has witnessed. But as he does, we receive a message. Text on screen appears that reads, "Anatomically, modern humans have existed for approximately 300,000 years." Before another message follows that says, "Recorded history accounts for roughly 1.6% of this time." This statement, of course, leaving us with the horrifying question, then what have we forgotten? Wyatt makes it to his car and the car starts. Comedically, Every Time Around by Vansire is playing on the radio. Wyatt quickly pulls out his phone to see that his maps aren't working. Perhaps Wyatt thinks he's still inside of some kind of structure. Maybe he's not out of the nightmare, only to be relieved when he sees a car pass him on the road. Assumedly safe, Wyatt begins to calm himself before he seemingly drives back to civilization. However, it seems that perhaps no one is safe, as the last shot we have of the Oldest View, at least up until this moment, is a POV shot of someone accelerating down the road. However, this doesn't seem to be Wyatt, as the only audio we can hear is the very, very loud noise of the giant rolling. Meaning that, presumably, the giant has somehow gotten out of the mall and is now running down the roads to either find Wyatt or do, I don't know, something. But either way, it seems the giant is free, and that is terrifying. And with that horrific image, we have the end of the Oldest View. So, what was that? The change in the narrative is strange. At once Wyatt died, but now he didn't. But why? Well, I have some theories for that, but none of them will make sense unless I talk about what I think the series means up until this point. See, Kane does a great job at hiding his hand whenever he makes a story. We saw that in the back rooms, and we see it here with the Oldest View. There is clearly a goal, an objective, an endpoint in mind, and he's very careful about how he drip feeds that information to the audience. The Oldest View is confusing in all the different pieces it lays out at once, but it's consistent enough that you know the pieces fit together. The bearded man in the forest at the beginning of the series, forest and greenery imagery making its way into the mall and the giant being underground, it all feels like it fits too much. And there's a reason for that. Everything we see in the series can be traced back to one cohesive thesis, even the title of the series itself. You can all trace it back to one idea that Kane is working off of. As a matter of fact, you can trace it back to a single picture. This picture, to be exact. But again, I'm getting ahead of myself. So let's start at the beginning, with a man named Julian Riverchin. I promise this is going somewhere. On August the 3rd of 1837, a man named Julian Riverchin was born in France. And no, nothing I'm about to say is within the universe of the oldest view. This is all real history we're talking about. Julian and his family would immigrate to Texas near the city of Dallas. Julian Riverton became a botanist and very quickly excelled at his work. Julian documented the Texas frontier and a lot of new plants that had not yet been cataloged. As a matter of fact, his work was so influential, it was used by institutions like the Smithsonian and colleagues of people like Charles Darwin. He had a tremendous effect on the world of botany and our understanding of ecology within the United States. However, as people often do, Julian Riverton would eventually die, passing away in 1905 of Bright's disease. Because of his work in the field of botany, in 1950, a nearby park in Dallas, Texas, was named after him. The Riverton Park for a while was seen as a hub and delightful place to visit in Dallas, until suddenly it wasn't. A lack of funding in the 70s led to the park falling into a state of disrepair, and people began to avoid it. That wasn't until in 1998 when a group of people began a project called the Riverton Roundup. This effort by volunteers cleaned up the Riverton Park and made it into a once again admired space. But why does any of this matter? Well, that group of volunteers would form a group called the Friends of Riverton Park. And in 2011, the Friends of Riverton Park would join the Bridge-O-Rama's Parade of Giants for the upcoming Margaret Hunt Hill Bridge opening. This group of volunteers dedicated to not only maintaining the park itself, but the memory of the man whose name inspires it. The idea of this Bridge-O-Rama event was that famous figures from Dallas and Texas history would be made into statues and showed off at the bridge's opening. So who else would the Friends of Riverton Park pick to be their statue other than Julian Riverton? They teamed up with Kevin Obregon, who over time built the giant. And on March the 3rd, 2012, the statue of Julian Riverton was unveiled at the Parade of Giants. His cardboard face was full of great detail, and his eyes showed care and depth to their features. His hands, quite poetically, were made of grass and flowers, fitting of a botanist who excelled in his field. And now, over 100 years after his death, long after he had been forgotten in many of the minds who benefited from his work, the image of Julian showed its face in Dallas once again. For a while after the parade, the Julian statue was shown in the Dallas City Hall before it was eventually moved to the Valley View Center Mall. There, the statue would remain for several years, back among a series of art studios and next to a painting of a giant octopus. I'm sure there's a lot of people out there who have memories of the tall, bearded, rolling giant that they would see at the mall on weekends. There were other giants from the Parade of Giants featured in the mall as well, but documentation from the mall's history isn't great. And at some point, it seems the giants were removed. Or at least, all the giants besides Julian. Perhaps because his construction was a lot more precarious than the others, the outstretched arms, I'm sure, caused some difficulty with transportation, as well as things like the flower hands or the heavy head, which even fell off when Julian was originally featured back in 2012. For whatever reason, when the Valley View Center Mall was shut down in 2022, Julian was left inside. It seems that for whatever reason, they just decided not to bring him out. In the final pictures of the abandoned Valley View Center Mall, it seems that much like the area around him, Julian's been left behind. And in the early videos we see of the mall's demolition, it seems the giant was destroyed along with it. The final remnants of the mall's history being the abandoned rolling puppeteer stand left in a demolished building. The demolition of the mall, as well as the giant, finished on May the 23rd of 2023, which is the same date we see from the trail camera Wyatt used before entering into the mall for the final time. So what does all of this mean? What on earth is Kane going on about? Well, we really don't have to guess because he told me outright on a live stream. A lot of you were probably there.
So I guess I'll start from the beginning with some context, and I haven't officially really talked about this even on my own server. So this is sort of like the inside scoop. I mean, a lot of people have figured this out on their own by now, but essentially there was this one image that I found a couple years back. I think it was like summer 2021. Let me get it for you. This image like freaked me out so much, or at least like punched me in the gut really hard when I first saw it. I just saved it on my computer. It was like compelling. This was way before Backrooms. I sort of came back into contact with this image and decided to like started getting really fascinated by it again. And so I started reverse image searching it, figured out where it came from, and then started going down the rabbit hole. I found some other images of it online, some very limited ones, because it's absurdly obscure. At the time, you couldn't look up Rolling Giant and really get anything. The only way I was really able to find images was by looking up image tags for Valley View Mall, like people tagging their photos from like 2012 on Instagram. This statue was created by a Dallas artist, Kevin Obregon, who I have since all this has happened, like I'm in communication with him. I was talking to him earlier today. In the beginning here, it was, I can't even explain how surreal this was. I and a couple others in a small little Discord group chat, like we would just spend hours and hours, like over our winter break, just scouring the internet for like any and all traces of this guy. And slowly we built up a library of like around 40 images. I think we sit at around like 50 today.
Finding this one image of the giant inspired so much. Why is there a huge, super detailed cardboard figure in the middle of an abandoned mall? Why does it look like that? Why is the mall being destroyed? What does any of this mean? And it sent Kane looking, and what he found was a story. A story of someone who is so admired for what he did to nature that monuments of nature, from parks to statues, are still built in his honor. And a name that sadly, especially if you're not from the Dallas area, you've probably never heard of before. A name that meant so much to a few people that they built a giant. And even the giant was eventually forgotten. I mean, what does it mean to forget something? The effects that Julian Riverton had still exist, sure. His work still lives on in the work that built off of it and came after. But what does it mean if we forget who put it there in the first place? I think the mall, the Rolling Giant, everything that Wyatt came across is a physical manifestation of forgotten memory. Think about it. When Wyatt makes his final venture into the mall, it is after the mall has been completely destroyed. The remnants of the giant and everything around it shoved into a black hole, into a void of what we write down. When Wyatt's in the mall, it is physically beneath the earth, buried to where none can find it except by happen chance, just like Wyatt did. Or perhaps, I should say, just like Kane did. I mean, Wyatt's played by Kane after all. Just as Kane so happened to come across an image of a giant that led him to all this discovery, Wyatt came across a hole in the earth that led him to the discovery as well. I like the mention too where Wyatt says he had a botany professor he was friends with. It's almost like the effects of Julian Riverton. A botany professor surely would base himself off some of the work that he created, that his legacy is surrounding Wyatt in ways Wyatt doesn't understand. And at the end of The Rolling Giant, the story of Julian ends. Julian, who was once a botanist, once acclaimed, once a park, all that has now been lost. All he has left is the giant, and that legacy has been lost as well. Now we have Wyatt, an individual who is thrusted straight into the memory that everyone else has forgotten, and he dies with it. That's why in the final shots of The Rolling Giant, we see Wyatt dead in the forest, black and white, forgotten like the land around him. And as a matter of fact, that forest has been representative of lost memories all along. Remember the bearded man this whole series started with? The guy walking through the woods, sitting on a log and writing something down? I said it before, but it means something now. That man is, of course, Julian Riverton. He is relegated to this forest, a land of memories. And then later on, when it's come Wyatt's time to die, the only memory that's left over is that of the giant. Julian has been forgotten in a place of forgotten things, and only his visage of the Rolling Giant is left in remembrance. Too much time has passed, and only shapes of what used to be are left behind. So it seems the giant was the last piece that Julian had to the real world, and now that's gone too. Because with Wyatt's death, who's there to say anything about it? And that idea, the concept of forgetting someone, forgetting even the things made in their honor, is tragic. And that's what the video, Life of a Giant, is about. Life of a Giant is simply a slideshow of pictures of Julian, to pictures of the giant, to pictures of it now forgotten, played to the tune of Please, 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 Let Me Get What I Want. Kane showed this video to me when I was watching The Rolling Giant on stream with him, and I think it's what put the nail in the coffin of this series never leaving my mind. What went from just an abstract, strange horror story that something kind of scary and something cool to think about became something more. For those who have been watching the channel for a while, you'll probably remember the House in the Ocean series as part of the Monument Mythos by Alex Kasanis, or Alex Kansas. The original idea with the House in the Ocean is it is a series that exists in your head. It was available for a while, but much like a lost loved one, it's now gone. So it's still real, at least it's still real up here, even if we can't touch it anymore. And that is the exact same way I feel about this stupid cardboard giant. It's so strange. The giant went from something I was afraid of to something I feel so sorry for. All the time and effort and work that was put into it. That, sure, there's still plenty of people alive who were a part of the project and, remember the pieces of it, or people who were at the Valley View Mall who still have a memory of the giant in their head. But the giant itself is gone, and Julian is gone. And now there is just people who speak of what used to be. And eventually, they'll be gone too. And sure, in the grand scheme of things, of humanity, culture, science, whatever, this one giant doesn't really matter, right? But with how our memory works, how collective we are, everything that happens to us informs another thing that happens later. How can we afford to forget anything? I think I know how Kane felt seeing the image of the rolling giant alone in the mall, because it's the same way I feel about it now. The giant once meant something to a lot of people. Julian once meant something to a lot of people. And even though they're not gone by any means, when you look at that picture, it's like you can watch the memory fade. And that's where a lot of the kind of misery of the series comes from. You are looking at a story after it is finished. The story you are watching is about one you can't remember. But there's also some hope in it as well. In the forest that we see the series open on, as well as several other scenes like Wyatt's death, we see that everything is black and white except for nature. Nature has always been here, and it will never be forgotten because inevitably it has to win. Julian dedicated his life to the knowledge and preservation of it, and in that way he is immortal, at least by the work he made. As the images of Julian and Wyatt and the giant itself become black and white, they become faded and distant, the nature around them is as green as ever. Much like when Wyatt steps back into the mall, it has been overtaken. The Valley View Mall now, much like the giant, is relegated to memory. And while the image of the mall Wyatt finds himself in at the end of the rolling giant seems to be faded and empty, the nature that survives it is now back more than ever. There's something hopeful to be said in that Julian invested himself in something permanent, so now in a way, he is also permanent. I think about, too, as Wyatt makes his way around the escalator, how, at least from what it appears to me, we see several other giants that were in the parade of giants as well. Each of them have their own story and memory that, much like Julian's, is being forgotten. What effects did they have? What mark did they leave on our culture that we'll never forget? Julian's is easy. It's nature, it's all around us, it pervades everything. But what of our other giants? What of other people who have been forgotten that are well worth remembering? But at the end of all this, Julian is just one piece of an almost infinite puzzle of those who have come before us. How many stories and effects are out there that we'll never remember, that truly have been forgotten to time? It's daunting to even consider. But the hopeful thing about the rolling giant is Julian isn't one of those stories. And I know I've spent all of this time talking about how he was forgotten and even the giant in his honor was forgotten, but that was all up until the rolling giant. Because think about it. You're watching it right now. Yes, at the time the mall was destroyed, it was forgotten, it was dead, but now it's back. The audience that has accumulated around the oldest view is... Do you love me? Do you need me?
Epic rap battles of history. Ed Sheeran versus Juliet. Begin.
Interesting, to say the least, but if there's one thing you can say about them, it's that they're dedicated. I have never heard of Julian Riverchin before The Oldest View. I knew nothing of his life, of his contributions, of his legacy, but the fans that have formed around this Kane Pixels internet series have made sure to change that. There's now a website called rollinggiantarchive.com that is a catalog of all the information I talked about and more regarding Julian Riverchin, as well as the giant itself. Something that was dead, a memory that was buried deep in the rock beneath the earth, is now out for all to see. And I think that's what we see at the end of the series. See, initially Wyatt was dead. He goes down to the memories hidden beneath the earth and perishes with it. That is until Dispersal, when something changes. Dispersal opens with us seeing Wyatt's death replayed and the forest open once again, the void of memory where things that are forgotten truly go to die. But the mall doesn't go into it. Instead, we see Scott Beck, one of the leaders in construction at the Valley View Mall's replacement, the Dallas Midtown, talking about the new exciting structure that will be built in the Valley View's wake. The pictures and images that we see of this are the same ones scattered across the walls within the offices seen back in the Rolling Giant. Even though the Valley View Mall was destroyed, even though by the time Wyatt comes across it, it's nothing, it still has the pieces of what will be later. The mall is filled with images of its aftermath. The Midtown would never exist had it not been for the Valley View Mall, just as so much would exist, like Wyatt's botany professor, perhaps, if it had not been for the likes of Julian Riverchin. The schematic that shows the correct way to get to the mall's exit, 1837-1905, is actually a date, 1837 to 1905. The life of Julian Riverchin. Not only that, but a document mentioned above, 1973-2023, is another date, 1973 to 2023, the total years of existence of the Valley View Center Mall. It's with this perhaps that the giant dies, that with Wyatt's death and with now a new Dallas Midtown being placed in the aftermath of where the giant once lived, that he will truly be forgotten forever. That was, of course, until Kane Pixels came along. Kane came across this whole story of the giant, of Julian, of everything that was being forgotten to time, and dug it out of the ground. I think that is what we see when we see the image of the crack appearing and the light shining across the giant's face. What was once buried is now being dispersed back for whatever we'll do with it. Effectively, the legacy is now given a second chance. And I think that's why in Dispersal, we see that this time, Wyatt lives. See, Kane could have came across the Rolling Giant, the image that he saw, and done nothing with it. The piece of himself that was curious, the piece of himself that was interested, the Wyatt, so to speak, could have gone into that memory and died there. But Kane decided to make the series, and with that, Wyatt is allowed to live. Wyatt comes out of the earth, and with this fortitude, with this determination, he escapes. He makes it back to our world. And because of that decision, the giant is now reborn. There may be a lot of memories and a lot of people who have been lost to time, but Julian Riverchin is not one of them. And there is such a hopefulness about that to me, that the very fact the series exists, and I think the series itself, because if I know Kane, he's going to be really weird and meta with it, I think the series itself shows symbolism of how it brought the giant back, about how it created something new out of the memory of what used to be. Because when we build so much off of our thoughts and where we've been, how can we afford to lose any of our memory? And I think that's what the oldest view is. Memory. Like quite literally, I think the term the oldest view equals the word memory. I believe the oldest view can be seen as the fear of forgetting. Julian was once a respected and remembered man, but as time passed, his existence faded. Years later, his image would be revived in the Rolling Giant, but much like the Valley View Mall, a thing once loved by many, the giant and Julian with it would be forgotten again. The themes play a lot into diminished monuments like ruined buildings and forgotten landmarks. I think Wyatt stepped into a manifestation of the past, things that used to be, and perhaps the giant simply wants to be remembered. And to me, that's what the series is about. That's what all of it means. But that's not where the horror comes from. I posed the question at the beginning of this video, what if we're forgetting something? What does it look like? And perhaps the most terrifying question that the oldest view asks is what happens when it comes back? I think the reason the giant was so terrifying during the Rolling Giant is because it is corrupted. It's not Julian. We saw what Julian looks like when he's in the forest, when he's in the land of forgotten memories or whatever. We see that he is still human, but then after Wyatt's death, we see that Julian is now the giant. Unless they're two separate entities, the memory of Julian has become something else. Remember that scene when Wyatt was about to escape and yelled, "What do you want?" And we see flashes of people, a horse, animals, all these things around the giant? I think these are all things remembered. I think they're things that sure may be lost, but they're still in one piece. They're still together. And I feel the giant doesn't have that anymore. It's becoming something else. A creepy concept that kind of sticks with me is at the end of Dispersal, we don't see what the giant looks like when it's above ground. Sure, we can assume that it's probably the same, but what if it isn't? See, Kane hasn't taken the statue of Julian Riverton and put it back in the Valley View Mall. He's made it into something else. He's made it a piece in a horror story. If Julian became the giant because of a forgetful corruption that allowed the image to be changed in the memories of those who see it. Because remember, the people who built the rolling giant didn't mean anything strange or creepy by it. But when you come across the liminal image of the giant in an abandoned shopping mall, well then you get strange and creepy ideas from it. If the rolling giant became that, then what does it become now that Kane has forcefully corrupted it into a monster that kills those who venture too far into its lair? What might this freed giant look like when revitalized but given a new shape? And that is something I don't have the answer to, but I'm very excited to see where it goes. But there's one other piece of terror from this series that I can't help but mention. Remember how in Dispersal text flashes on screen that says humans have existed for 300,000 years, but we only have history for 1.6% of that time? Well, if Julian is the only example we've seen so far, and keep in mind, this is a guy who died in 1905. It's not ancient history. If Julian's the only example we have of what a corrupted memory can become when we forget it and it comes back, then what do you think that means for the other 98% of 300,000 years? There's one thing from the series I have neglected to mention up until now. At the very end of Life of a Giant, the last image we see is of Julian Riverton, and then we get a quick glimpse of something. This is an altar, a statue, a site, I don't know. But what I do know is Kane is setting something up. As mentioned, Kane and I are friends, or friends is a strong word. I like the guy and he likes to see me suffer. So while I was live streaming for a completely unrelated reason, Kane decides to drop Dispersal and then hang out in the live chat to see how I respond. Once it's over, he quickly sent me a link to something. And after I clicked on that link, he immediately deleted the message.
Kane just DM'd me something. I hate you. Let me finish this thought before you put me through your mind tricks. This is the music that was playing as Kane was running away there at the end. Jebel Irhoud is an archaeological site located just north of the locality known as Tilet Ighoud. Probably got that wrong. Approximately 30 miles southeast of the city of Safi in Morocco. It is noted for the hominin fossils that have been found there since the discovery of the site in 1960. Originally thought to be Neanderthals, the specimens have since been assigned to Homo sapiens and, as reported in 2017, have been dated to roughly 300,000 years ago.
I think this starting point, this very first place of humanity, is something we catch a glimpse of with the image of this altar, this abstract pyramid of sorts. I would like to mention, for one, the construction of this altar is very similar to the atrium within the Valley View Mall. This could just be coincidence, although I don't believe in those with Kane, but at the least it could mean something as to how we're building the same structures over and over without knowing where we're getting it from, without knowing the reason we do the things we do in the first place. Once again, forgetting our own history. But I think it relates to where the series is going, something I don't know yet, but I have a guess. If the giant is what is created when we forget the memory of a single man, then what happens when we forget entire cultures? What happens when memories we have left to rot and fester beneath the ground are shot with life and brought up to stand with us again. What does that look like, and what will they be? And that's what I think The Oldest View is getting at. I think in future episodes of the series, we are going to see not only the giant, but other things brought up from nothing. I think in future installments, we will see not only the giant, but other things that we have forgotten come back with a vengeance. Now, I, for one, cannot wait to see it. And hopefully, you can't either. I'm sure a lot of you have seen that Kane Pixels is working with A24 on the production of a Backrooms film. I'm excited for that for several reasons, but one of those being, as Kane continues to make his way into the industry, I can only imagine where the scale will go with some of these projects. I don't know when we're going to see the next episode of The Oldest View. I think it will be a while, but I think when we do see it, it will be worth the wait. That, or he is going to wait for the moment I post this video to drop the next episode. In which case, I take back every nice thing I said. He's a hack, monstrous even, and doesn't deserve a platform. Yeah, all jokes aside, The Oldest View is one of the most interesting and thought-provoking series in or outside of horror that I've seen in quite a while. And I'm so thrilled that I got to talk about it to you all today. And hopefully you're at least a little thrilled to hear about it. And if you are, that's really cool, and I appreciate it. And I just want to say thank you for watching. Kane is not only a fantastic creator, but a fantastic friend as well. It means a lot to know someone who isn't only kind and good-natured, except when it comes to making me hurt, but also someone who is such a unique creative mind. I truly feel, not to just gas my guy up, but to also do that a little bit. It's rare to look at someone and know that they are going to be somewhere special down the road. And I have that opportunity with Kane, and it really does mean a lot. Also, a massive thank you to Kane for making the audio that was used in the intro of this video. No thanks for titling it Iceberg Boy. For those that don't know, the reason people call me Iceberg Boy in every comment you've ever seen now is because Kane called me that during a live stream once. So thanks for also making the audio that I have to credit in the description and here the same thing. Really means a lot. But for real, thanks to Kane for the track. The music does go hard, and you'll hear it periodically in my videos from here on out. If for some reason you decided to watch this video before you watched The Oldest View, you shouldn't have, but if you want to check it out for yourself now, there's some nuance and maybe some stuff I didn't talk about that may change your mind or give you a new theory of the series or what have you. The link to that will be in the description. Check it out. Kane certainly deserves it. The series really is amazing, and I'm happy to see it getting the traction it deserves, even if part of that traction is due to me screaming at a cardboard statue. But, you know, suffering for art or something. Once again, go check out Kane Pixels' channel. Also, the merch, as well as the pin set, is available for a limited amount of time. Get that at the link in the description while you can. And also, if you're interested in coming on the Stalker Tour and haven't bought tickets yet, do that now because I'm about to leave for the tour, and also there's not a lot of seats left. So get in on that, also in the description while you can. Thank you all for the support on everything. Thank you all for waiting on this video. I know a lot of you guys have been asking for it for a while, but The Oldest View is a big series and there's a lot going on, so I wanted to do it justice. Hopefully you understand, and again, thank you all for your patience. So I believe that should do it for now. Check out all the things that I mentioned, description and whatnot. And again, thank you to Kane for making this series. Really appreciate it, dude. But with that out of the way, that should be it for now, but I just want to say thank you for watching. I hope that you enjoyed, and I will see you in the next one. Bye! Almost forgot. This isn't going to mean anything to new viewers. Rolling Giant? Did someone say